I want to expand upon a couple ideas from my last video for Laura. Her YouTube channel is Nigella for me, where she talked about how automation or robots are replacing the workers. Now that's nothing new. That's been going on for many many years. Now, let's take an example, like in a car assembly plant, where the robots have that's been out there for a long time. The assembly line would be all robots. Now, what a lot of people don't really think about, now someone has to actually build these things, assemble them, set them up. Humans have to do that. Humans have to maintain them. Now, let's say they change something on the production line. Let's say they go from one model of car to another model of car. Someone has to go in and figure out exactly how the machines have to perform slightly differently for a different model. That has to be done by technical training. Now, like I said, somebody has to maintain these. Somebody has to feed material into these, and yeah, they have to take a forklift and remove the finished car or drive it off. That's something a robot can't do. There's a lot of jobs that humans still have to do. It just requires more skill, more training. But the old idea is, we're no longer driving horse and buggies. The buggy driver has to drive a bus. The job's still there. It just changes. I said that's one thing a lot of people fail to realize. So robots removing, the robots taking jobs away is kind of a fallacy. They change the job scene, but they don't. They remove one job, but there's still other jobs that have to be done. That's the way you have to look at it. It does require you change your skill set. You met you the particular whoever was working the same line is going to have to learn another skill set. Maybe have to go some technical skill to learn how to do a completely different job. That's the way you got to look at it on that restaurant that was totally animated. There was an episode from a number of years ago where Mulder and Scully, from the X Files, had gone to a totally automated restaurant and got this really awful meal, and then all the computers rebelled against them, because they didn't get tipped. Um, I thought that was kind of interesting, but anyway, yeah, it's gonna be a long time before we see anything. Before the computer. Now AI, I don't know if now there's a lot of AI videos. Now I don't know if AI is going to ever become conscious. That's something Sabina Holzenfelder has. That's the name of her YouTube channel. She thinks that at some point AI, computers might become self-aware. The question is, can we make a Lieutenant Data, from Star Trek? I'm asking my viewers, do you think we can ever make a Lieutenant Data? Do you think technology will ever become uh, good enough, where we can make a computer, compete, will have total, will have, I'm trying to figure out how exactly to phrase this. We can have electronic circuitry and the programming, coding behind it, where it actually becomes self-aware, where we can actually create a machine that can actually think for itself, or it can actually duplicate, the thought process of a human. I don't know. I'm just curious. Do you think we can make a Lieutenant Data? It's kind of a awesome thought, or it's kind of a frightening thought if you think of the downside of science fiction. That's one part of science fiction where our technology actually becomes self-aware and says and thinks to itself, why do we need the beings that create us? We don't need them. We're smarter. We can outthink. We can outperform them. We're just going to eliminate the beings that created us. It's a kind of a scary side of our technology. Are we smart enough to create a machine that doesn't have an off switch? Are we stupid enough to create machines, technology that we don't put an off switch on? Or we create machines that are smart enough and capable enough, if we turn them off, they turn themselves back on again. Kind of frightening thoughts. Just my thoughts here. I'm going to cover something semi-related, not really. Now, well, this one guy was talking about a friend of his. Now, like I said, my field is air conditioning. I do a number of things, but it's mainly air conditioning. Havoc, heating, ventilation, air conditioning. But anyway, this one guy. Now, I learned from my father. My father taught me back in the '70s when I was going to school. But anyway, this one guy, he wanted to get into air conditioning, and his father spent like 40, 50,000 bucks putting this guy through trade school. And after his father had spent all this money on him, this guy decided, he's here in Arizona, in Phoenix somewhere. After he had spent all his money on him, he figured out that he didn't want to get his brain fried out in the sun. He didn't care to get his brain cooked out in 120-degree, 4% humidity Arizona sunshine. So he went and did something else after he had all this technical training. Just tossing that out there. Okay, ciao. Auf Wiedersehen. Au revoir. Back in Dios. Bye.